Hi everyone!
Hi
I'm
everyone!
Christina,
And I'm Kenna.
and we're gonna spill the tea for you guys today. We have a very special guest for you guys, and Kenna, who is that guest?
Our guest this week is Jewell Blackman.
Yay! Okay. Hi!
Hey!
How are you?
Good. Hi, everybody.
Okay, so we always like to start off with an emotional check-in just to see where everybody's vibing at, how everybody's feeling today. So, Jewelle, how are you doing today?
I'm a little tired today. I've been on go since this morning, since I woke up. But I'm okay. But it's one of those days where you can see the end in sight. It's one of those days. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. Everything's good.
Yeah.
Kenna, how are you doing?
This week I'm feeling great. I don't know. It's a good day today, and I'm excited to be doing this interview. Christina, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. I'm really excited to be doing this interview and getting to talk to you. I know Ken and I have talked to you before, and so we just really enjoy your company, and we're so glad to talk to you. I've also been just listening to some really good music, and I've been getting out of that COVID slump, I guess, that everyone falls into every once in a while, but I'll be fully vaccinated next week, and
Oh, good for you.
I'm just ready for it. I'm ready for it. So, I guess it's time that we should dive right into the interview. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, sure. Yes. Jewell Blackman is the name. I am a music theater performance. I'd rather call myself just an artist because I do many different things. When I was 8 years old, I started playing the violin, and that's kind of where the music took hold. And I also studied a bit of dance. But as I started the violin, I kind of left the dance alone. And I think music theater really began to interest me when I saw The Lion King in Canada, the Canadian production. I saw that, and that was the first time I ever thought that I'd want to do this as a career. I had actually intended on doing law. I was already in my second year of university, and I'd planned on becoming a lawyer. And then I saw that show, and that's kind of what changed my trajectory. I saw people who looked like me doing what I actually love to do in my pastime and making money from it, like making an earning from it. And I was like, okay, so maybe I want to do this. And after some tries, I eventually got into The Lion King, and that's where it all began from there. Worked with all the major theaters out here in Canada, and then Hadestown came along, which was a lovely blessing, which allowed me to use all of my talents. Because when I first did Hadestown in Canada, I was the violin fate. And then as it went to Broadway, I had to learn how to play the accordion. But that's great. It's all about learning and diversifying. And that's exactly what that experience was. So that's a little snippet. I left a whole bunch of stuff out, but
it's okay. We'll talk about it
later. So what else can I say? I don't know. Ask the questions. I'm way better at asking questions than just giving information.
Okay.
So I know that you played Dina in Dreamgirls, and currently I have to sing Listen for a performance. And I'm just wondering how you kept your stamina up while singing that song, because it is a very challenging song.
So when I did Dreamgirls, it was right. That's crazy. The first time I did Dreamgirls was when the movie came out with Beyonce and everyone. So Listen is not in the original Broadway version, right? So I didn't have to worry about that because that is a big song. So I didn't have to worry about that. When I think about it, the biggest song for Dina, I think for me, stamina wise, was the second act opener. I forget what that number is called, but the second act opener when they're in Las Vegas and they have this big show, and I swear that number feels like it's 8 minutes long. I know one time when I performed it, I was so tired that I missed about 8 beats, and so I was like way off with the music and everything. But that happens because it's live theater. But yeah, in terms of stamina, for me, I personally like working out. So I always try to incorporate that into my day, whether it's just going for a jog or even just walking, getting some air out there, or training in the gym. Definitely helps. And singing on the treadmill, that is actually a thing. And it does actually help work with helping your breath control and that kind of stuff. And people say to hydrate, which will help as well, right? I'm not the best person to tell you that because I hate drinking water, but it can only help you. It can't hurt you.
Okay, so I know that you were in Hadestown, both the Canadian production and Hadestown on Broadway. You were in the original Broadway cast. So what was that entire experience like for you?
So from the Canadian and then the Broadway version, wow. So yeah, when I actually saw the breakdown for Hadestown in Canada, I was like, holy crow, this is a show where they're asking you to come as my full self. They wanted singers who also played instruments, and the fact that the violin was one of the ones listed, I was like, oh my goodness, this couldn't be any better. And then they wanted I'm not gonna say traditional, non-typical music theater voices, and I was like, okay, I think that's right up my alley. So I actually submitted myself. My agent didn't submit me because I told my agent, because I have a son, I told my agent I wanted to stay in Toronto because I didn't want to have to go away. And that was taking place in another province. It was taking place in Alberta, in Edmonton, Alberta. But I saw this opportunity come up. I saw the names Rachel Chavkin and Anais Mitchell, and I'd just come to know of the Great Comet. And I was like, okay, let me try and get in on this. So I went in for the audition. It was super cool. I sang Our Lady of the Underground, and I played the violin too when I did it. Then I did some Fate choreo with David Newman. That was all fun. It was really nice, warm room. Anais and Rachel were there. And I think a week later, I found out that I got it. Went to Edmonton. Crazy cool experience because the show is so different in many ways from what is now on Broadway. The storyline between Orpheus and Eurydice, and Hades and Persephone, but more so Orpheus and Eurydice, is way stronger now, I feel, than it was in the Edmonton version. And also in terms of the set before had this huge, beautiful, gigantic chrome tree, this barren tree, and then actual railroad tracks on the set that the workers had to somehow pick up and move. I think it was during Living It Up or something like that. But what I loved about working with Rachel, and I'd never seen a director really do this before, especially so far on. So we did about 2 or 3 previews with that show set. And then after the second preview, Rachel was like, okay, guys, we're going to cut. We're basically restaging the first act. We're going to cut the railroad. That's not working. We're going to bring in some little tables and chairs to be over stage left. And we're all like, what? We have a show in like 5 hours. But she was fearless and she changed that. And I love that the creative team realized that something was not working and they were not scared to change it. And in a big way. Right? The entire first act staging wise was very different. The Fates used to have a little platform that we used to sing on. That didn't make it to Broadway as well. That used to be a little thing that lived on the side of the stage. So that was a great learning experience in terms of seeing how if you're not happy with something, don't be scared to change it. You know what I mean? Just because it's set doesn't mean that it can't be changed and morph into something better. And then Broadway happened, and that was a whole. So to originate something, that was, I don't even know if that was ever a dream. I think my dream was always just to get to Broadway. And I always thought it would be with The Lion King. I always thought that. But then to get to originate something where it felt so in my wheelhouse, but also pushed me with having to learn how to play the accordion, which that was crazy the first few weeks because I was like, this is not easy. You want me to sing and dance and play the accordion at the same time? Okay. But it pushed me, it challenged me, and in the end it worked out great. Yeah. And to have a Broadway, sing on a Broadway album is a whole other thing. And we sang that. When did we do that? We did that the day we recorded that, literally a day after we opened. So we were all on this high. And then on our day off, we had to go into the studio and record that, which was, it was amazing, but we were all so tired, but it was amazing. And so when the chips are down was actually the first song that was recorded. They called us in at 9:30 in the morning to sing that song, and I will never forget that feeling of being, you couldn't schedule us later in the day, right at 9:30 singing that song, but but it all worked out. Yeah, and the cast, the people, the show, the Tonys. There are so many things. There's so many experiences, so many firsts, right? And so many great firsts, and a great experience of working with a creative team where there's no ego involved. Because I've worked in many rooms where ego is just dominant and toxic, and that was not the case in Hadestown. So that's a beautiful thing. Other shows have a lot to live up to when I move on and do other things now after having that experience.
Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned ego because right before this, I was ranting to Kenna about ego and all the different stuff I was learning about it, and I was like, yeah, I just thought that was very interesting that you brought that up.
It's a real thing.
It
is
is.
a real thing.
It is.
Okay. Jewelle, like, what was it like performing on Broadway versus like just other off-Broadway places?
You know what? In the end, I really don't think it's different. A stage is a stage, and an audience is an audience. What I found different and special, it's more so about being in New York as opposed to, like, I'm from Toronto, so it's a pretty big city. But the arts culture and the culture in general there in New York is way more open and varied. I see less people striving to be like other people and more so like themselves in New York, which I truly appreciate, right? And for me, in terms of my artistry and what I bring, like, I've always had this voice, right? But back home in Canada, not that nobody cared, but it's like it didn't get the same kind of attention as people who do the high belts, can sing. Like, I don't sing like that. And so I just found New Yorkers, Americans, whoever came to see the show, just really welcoming and really complimentary. And just the fact that they pick me out to tell me these things that's the thing it's like they really celebrate difference not there. In New York, they really celebrate difference. And that's what I found with the community as opposed to in Canada. But being on a stage on Broadway, as opposed to, like, I did the Stratford Festival, to me, that's not different. That's not different. It's just that Broadway has notoriety surrounding it, right? But the actual performing and working of it all, it's pretty much the same. It's just the people who are coming to see it, and the community, the Broadway community, is way different, I find.
Yeah. I know earlier you mentioned wanting to stay in Canada or in Toronto to be with your son. Mm-hmm. So what's it like being a performer and also at the same time raising a child?
Yeah, that hits a lot. There's a lot of give and take. There's a lot of risks. There's a lot of people being upset with you and not understanding the choices that you're making and feeling that you're making the wrong choice. Because I left my son in Toronto to come and do Hadestown, because when I got the call, it was the middle of the school year, and when I left, he was 8 years old, and I was like, I'm not gonna pull my child out of school and rip into a completely different school system, American school system, just because I need to go do this thing. And so, I'm sure some people look down upon that in terms of a mother leaving her child. And of course, I dealt with my own guilt in terms of that. But I felt that in that moment, that was the right thing to do. So you have to be prepared to make those kinds of decisions. Or if you want to be a particular kind of mother, know that strive for those things that will take you away before you have children so that you're content, being mom and being there all the time. But I don't believe you can't do all the things and have all the things. And I saw this meme, I think the other day somewhere, and it said something about a man, I think, had asked his wife or his partner about, you got to decide. It's either the dream or the family. And I'm like, well, that doesn't work. No, I believe it can be both. It's just about compromise and a little give and take here and there.
Definitely. I think everything in an essence is about compromise, right? Nobody can ever have exactly what they want or exactly what they envision. And so I think it's about finding that balance and being content with the decisions you make and being content if everything doesn't play out exactly how you envisioned it, because that's just not realistic.
Exactly. Because I've been trying to get to Broadway before I was in a relationship, before I had a child. I tried like crazy. Didn't happen. And this is when the opportunity came. So yeah.
For sure.
Well, I know you've been working on a musical, My Name, Not My Story, which is inspired by Nina Simone's For Women. Can you talk about like that process of just like writing and working on it, the musical?
Yeah, so I swear I've been working on this since before my child was born. And I've had so many drafts of it, but Nina Simone has just, from the time I came to know of her, which wasn't until my last year of high school or first year of university, I hadn't heard her music before or paid attention to her. And I was just taken away by her story and her voice and her artistry. And, sometimes being an actor, you feel like maybe, who are you to start writing a show? You're an actor, you're not a playwright. But I'm like, who am I not to write a show? I love Nina Simone, and I think I have something to say and something to share and something to bring to light that is not talked about. And I think I can bring it forth in a entertaining way that will captivate and maybe challenge some people. And within that, there's lots to learn, as I'm not naturally a writer. I'm a songwriter, but in terms of playwriting, that's different. Writing it, I realized that it was very monologue heavy based. So I had work to do on figuring out how to include dialogue to make the story more full and not so one dimensional, just in terms of monologue song. And so with the various drafts, I think I've gotten better at that. And then there's also a thing to be said of, because I was so new to writing, I would not rely on, but I would look to people who have written stuff before and who've had success, right? And I think it's good to have an outside eye, because it's easy to create in a vacuum and think that what you're making is great. But that also being said, I think that any feedback that you get can always be taken with a grain of salt, because it is your vision. And there did come a point where I was writing the story and I was getting feedback from this bigwig, this producer, who's had much success, and it was turning into something else. The story was turning into something else that I had never intended. And so, you just have to know when feedback is useful to you and when it's not. I think that's one of the biggest things that I've learned about working on that show.
Well, I know that in addition to stage performing, that you've also been in some TV and film stuff. I know you were in Kim's Convenience. I am Black and Green. So there's nothing more hilarious to me than just watching Kim's Convenience, because I feel like it's the same thing with like me watching Blackish. It's just like,
right, yeah,
hilarious. And Kim's Convenience, when I just found it on Netflix, I was like, this is hilarious. So what was Kim's Convenience like for you?
That was great. I actually, before that became a TV show, it was a play. And I had done a workshop with Ince Choi. I think it's Ince Choi who wrote it. Um, with him. So I knew all about Kim's Convenience before it became Kim's Convenience on TV, which I thought was so cool to see this thing that started as a play and then is doing so well on TV. And I'm so sad that it got canceled. But that's a whole other thing. Working on that, yeah, it was cool. It was fun. I don't think I'm funny. So the fact that I even got cast in the part to me I was like, oh, okay. This is fun. This is cool. This is funny. And what was my scene? I had scenes with the daughter. Yeah, it was a great experience. And the scene that I was actually the episode that I was actually in was kind of funny because it was about the daughter mistaking another Black hostess at the supper club for me. So it was all about misidentifying and seeing all Black people as the same, and that whole thing played out. But they did it in a very in a comedic and tasteful way, which I thought was great because I think of people outside of our race don't realize how often that shit happens, so it was kind of cool to have it play out in an actual episode. Yeah, it was great. And I got to work with a buddy of mine who I'd worked with in theater. He was in my episode too, which I thought was really, really fun. They hire a lot of theater actors on that show, which is great.
I think one of the things that Kim's Convenience does so well as opposed to other shows is identifying the stereotypes.
Yes.
And taking the truth of certain things and then leaving the negative, all of this stuff that people think they know, but they don't. And I think they really address a racial stereotype from inside of the race.
Yes, they do.
It being a show with a white person being like, this is this. And it's like, no, you don't know what you're writing about because you're not within that. But I know
exactly
watching it and seeing all the Korean stereotypes that I know personally and like seeing it play out, it's absolutely hilarious as opposed to like, I think when it becomes an issue is when you have a non-minority or, like a white person or specifically like a white male writing stereotypes or writing things they think are truths and things they think are facts for other races, right?
Exactly. And I love how it was flipped on its head because usually when you see those things, it is portrayed from a white person's perspective with a Black person, but here it was not. Here it was with a Korean. So she was having her own moment of being like, oh my gosh, how could I, do you know what I mean? She was having that own moment for herself. How am I doing this as well? Which I thought which you don't see that, which happens,
and
right?
It's really to address something that happens often, but not making it to the point where it's not palatable.
Exactly. Which is great. Yeah, it's a great little show.
I have what is it like being a Black woman in the industry?
Sometimes it's tiring. Sometimes it feels like a weight on your shoulder. I can only speak because most of my experience has been in Canada. So what I can say is that my thinking about it in ways has changed because there was definitely a time in my career early on where, there's only one or two roles, usually just one, where they have a person of color in a show, in an ensemble show. And it doesn't have anything to do with race. It's just a show, right? But there was definitely a period of time, I want to say 10, 15 years of my career, where it was common that there was only one or two of us in a show, and usually in an ensemble role. So it created this kind of competitiveness, but in a different way, because you're going against your brothers and sisters who, we're all in this game together. We're all trying to get that get that coveted role. And how ridiculous is it that we're all trying to get that one coveted spot in maybe even a crappy ensemble show, but we all just want to perform so much that we want that one coveted spot. So it can create a bit of tension and nastiness that just doesn't need to be there. But these theater companies, tend to put us in those kinds of situations, which I think sucks, and I think which did create some animosity, I will say, when I was coming up between other women of color, because we're all going for this one damn role. So that's one thing now that I look at, differently. I'm like, we're all just trying to work. We all just wanted a chance to work. And we're not given as many opportunities as other people. And I think that's why there's such a fight in us for when we go for parts, because we feel like they are so few and far in between that we won't get another chance. Right. But I'm hoping with shows like Hadestown and just new voices and new artists coming out and different people behind the table. I hate when I go in for a show, like I went in for the Color years ago, the original Color Purple. So I'm dating myself now. I went to New York because I got an audition for the Color Purple, and the creative team, I think there was one Black person on the creative team. Like, it was so, like, I was confused and shocked. I was used to that in Canada, but I didn't expect that when I came to New York. And it was the same thing. I'm like, how are they telling this story? How are these people the people in charge of telling the story? Have they really done their homework? Have they really done their research? So that was something. And then even recently, one of my last gigs before I did Hadestown was a show about South African apartheid, that ran a story counter to a woman who has survived the Holocaust. And the entire creative team was white, except for a dramaturge who they brought in after the fact. Right? So it's just, it can be uncomfortable. It's like, when do you say something? You're worrying about your job, you're worrying job security, you're worrying about being seen as difficult as a problem. But I think for me now that has changed, where if something's not feeling right, I'm not going to continue in the process. Or I will speak up and just mention it. You might want to rethink this, how you're approaching this. You might want to bring other voices in who can actually help you tell this story authentically, if that's what you're interested in. Sometimes they're not interested in that. They just want to do the surface, right? So now I definitely speak up more, and I only do projects that I want to do. I'm not as desperate. Maybe that's what it is. I'm not as desperate to do a show. If I'm not interested in the show, whereas before I was like everything, I'd just go for everything. But if I'm not interested in the show and it's not speaking to me, then I don't bother auditioning. And I think that's been a definite evolution for me in the business as a Black woman, from being the one who's so gung-ho, I want to do everything. I'll put up with what I need to put up with to be in the show. Because I put up with some stuff in some shows, done some things now I think about, I'm like, that was straight up racist and crazy, but I did that. But not anymore. And I've even called out, during this pandemic, I've called out some theater companies here in Canada for how I was treated 5 or 6 years ago, and they've come forward and they've apologized. But I'm like, the proof is in the pudding. You got to show me in action that something has actually changed within your institute. So now I'm definitely speaking up more, and I'm not scared about burning bridges. I'm like, it's not a bridge I need to cross if I have to burn it. Right?
Well, in that vein, I think this is a good time to plug Broadway for Racial Justice. I think Sydney's going to put it down there. But please donate to Broadway for Racial Justice. They have a really cool thing for if you experience any race-related trauma they have a hotline, and it's 24 hours a day. And if you just want to rant, or if you want to find out ways where you can take action against these companies or anything that made you just feel uncomfortable, or that you're not comfortable with and that you're not okay with, and you need someone to talk to about it and you don't know who to talk to, Broadway for Racial Justice has a program. Somebody, a person of color on the other line, will pick up, and you can talk to them and figure out how to take action. They have a lot of different resources. If you're not of color and you're white, they also have resources on how to be a better ally, or how to not fall into performative allyship, which I think a lot of people do. So definitely donate to Broadway for Racial Justice. We have a GoFundMe link down there. Definitely donate and check out their website at broadwayforracialjustice.com. But yeah, so sorry, back to the interview. I wanted to ask you, I know that you were talking about like producers and how like these creative teams are all white and they're trying to tell our story, right? And so I know that there's been a big initiative. I know there's been pushes for colorblind casting. What do you think about just that? I think the term itself, colorblind casting, and then
is a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, colorblind casting is should not be a thing, because this is not going away. What either of you it's not going away. So how can you be blind to it? And how can you ignore what I bring because of it? Because that's gonna inform your story. Color conscious, be aware that I am this. You have to be aware. You cannot, colorblind casting is the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard of in my life. And then it goes to, I feel like it further perpetuates the theory that white is right, and that is the norm, right? So white is the norm, and so in order for you to play within the norm, we need to not see you. We need to not see your color, and now you can come and play. So I don't agree with colorblind casting at all. Be conscious and aware of the color completely.
Yeah, I totally agree. Do you have any like tips for minorities wanting to pursue musical theater in the future?
Sounds so regular, but it's like, honestly, stay true to who you are, and practice what you do well. Don't worry yourself with trying to be the next Audra or be the next Brian Stokes Mitchell, or don't be the best you. And so find those things that are quirky, different, things that you love yourself, and build upon those. And if you have other loves, I say work on those as well, because you never know how they will help you and aid you in this career in the future. I never figured I'd be playing like the accordion. I play the piano, so it helped me that I played the piano. I never figured I'd be playing the accordion on Broadway. Do you know what I mean? Like, or that I would really be bringing my violin and playing, because I've done a bunch of shows where I play the violin on stage. I didn't think necessarily that would happen, but just because you may have a love for singing and performing and acting, don't necessarily shut down all the other things that you can do as well. If you're a gymnast, if you're a great tennis player, if you're a great tumbler, like those things can definitely help you as well. So I say diversify your talent and really hone in on what it is that makes you uniquely you.
Yeah, I play the piano at church. I accompany my church, so I guess that's good to hear that talent could help me.
Of course. Yeah, most definitely. That just helps your musicality in general as well, right?
Yeah, and I also think there's like this push, or maybe I just feel this way, but I feel like there's this cookie cutter image of what you have to be on Broadway. And I feel like when you're like, I guess like my age and Kenna's age, you see all these other people who are your peers, and you're all striving to try and do the exact same
thing. Yeah.
When you do that, then there's no individuality and everything is lost. And now there's 20 of you in this room and 19 of you are exactly the same. And who's
exactly
left, right?
That's why I'm kind of glad I didn't go the route of a of a theater school. And I'm kind of glad that I didn't, because I had no intention of doing this business, right? I went to school, I did a double major in music and film. I wasn't planning on being, so I'm so glad I didn't go to an acting conservatory, for the fact that I didn't have anyone pigeonholing and telling me this is your type, because I'm pretty sure that's what happens. They type you from the time you walk in that door, and they say, these are the kind of roles that you're going to do. Focus on that. I'm like, who are you to tell me who I'm going to be as a performer? There are many different layers, many different variations to the things that I can do. So, and I think that's kind of so I think it's good that I never experienced anybody telling me who I was supposed to be. I was just picking songs. I was like, oh, I like that song, I'm going to sing that song at the audition. Other people would be like, that is the weirdest choice. I sang for when I had to re-audition for Hadestown for Broadway, I sang Riders on the Storm by The Doors. Like, who does that? It's just, you gotta do your own thing. And that's when they will pay attention. If they're hearing the same song 5,000 times, they're gonna have their heads down like this. We see it all the time in auditions rooms. And as soon as they hear something different, they're gonna be like, what is this? They're gonna pay attention. So yeah, if you can find a theater program that is really about celebrating your individuality and helping find out who you are as an artist, as opposed to you going and they telling you, that's great. But I don't know how often that happens. From what I've heard from friends who have gone that route, I don't hear that happening at all.
Yeah. Where do you get your inspiration from? Like, just for all of your artistry, where do you draw your inspiration and what fuels your creativity?
Oh my goodness. This question I can never answer, because I don't know if it's from a particular person or it's from a particular place. Sometimes I feel like it comes from the place of feeling silenced or ignored or avoided. And so I feel like I have no choice but to make noise and to create art and make people pay attention. Sometimes it honestly comes from that place. I think a lot of the time, actually, for me, that's where it comes from. It's this, in a way, it's a little bit sad, but in a way, it comes from feeling the need to prove myself. And that's not necessarily a good thing, but it's just this need to show that, yes, I'm here and I deserve to be here. And I'm going to keep on showing you that I deserve to be here. So I'm going to keep on doing all these things. I'm going to keep on creating all these things and sharing with you till you get it. Because I know I get it.
Yeah, that was so well said. Wow.
Oh, good. Okay. That was okay. Thank you.
What do you want to see in the future from the theater industry?
Just a healthy environment where artists are not scared to speak up when they don't feel safe or supported. People who have, I would love to see the people at the heads of theaters not all being the same type of person. Let's vary who those producers are, so we can, and that it will in turn will have more varied stories making it to stages and to theaters. And I mean that from, racially to culturally to class wise. Let's mix the whole thing up. There needs to be a definite shift and a refocus on why we like to tell stories and why we like to share art, right? It's not about pushing, it shouldn't be about pushing one agenda. It should be about sharing and celebrating and living and challenging and all those things. And I don't want to see another revival on Broadway for 5 years.
Yeah, I remember, I'm trying to think what year this was, that it was just revival after revival after revival. And I was like, okay, yeah. I think
if you're gonna revive it, like spin it on its head or something. But
right.
Honestly, I really feel like there's no need to revive stuff when there were so many people writing new stuff. There were so many people writing new stuff.
It is. I think it's a place of like kind of greed a little bit. It's like we know this makes money, so this is what
that's
we're gonna do.
definitely that. Why the Music Man is trying to happen, I will never understand. I will never understand.
I don't think
all the
anybody
choices
was excited for that because the Music Man itself is just like, I know I was in an expo and we did Pick a Little, Talk a Little, and I just remember when they gave us every different school that was participating got a different song. And I remember seeing that our school got the Music Man and sighing and just being like, oh man, this is what we have to do. And I don't know anybody who was just excited for that. And another thing, I think there's a lot of adaptations going on. And I think adaptations are great, but it also falls into the line of we're not telling a new story.
I agree. Or adaptations can be good in the sense that maybe they're telling stories that we haven't heard before, but no, usually they're stories that we've heard of before and somebody's just adapting it for the stage. That's very true. So yeah, let's just get some new stuff. There's stuff out there. I'm making stuff. People are making stuff.
Right.
Let's get that new stuff out there. I was reading that in the UK, a bunch of producers came together and decided to give a bunch of new and upcoming producers free reign in the theaters for 2 weeks or something to produce whatever shows they want to do. And these are all new producers, new voices coming. And I was like, that is incredible. Why can't there be something like that on Broadway? Can't there be a month or a week like that on Broadway where one Broadway house that is empty, produces new shows by new artists, just let that be their thing. I think that'd be awesome.
I know that right now there's an initiative going on, and I don't know exactly what it's called. I believe it's called like the Black Broadway Producers Initiatives, but it's an initiative going on right now where they're training Black people to be producers and be stage managers and everything. Because I guess I heard somebody say this the other day, and they were like, people go and they see a show that maybe has a pretty diverse cast, or what they consider to be a diverse cast, or there's more than one ensemble member being man number 7, right? And you think, wow, this is great. Like, let's support this show. But then everybody else behind the scenes is white, and it's just not that. But another thing I have a question for you about is that I think a lot of people say like stuff about, like diversifying theater, but I know that even if you go to The Lion King, majority of the audience is white.
Yeah.
So what do you think has to be done to get more Black people and brown people and people of color in general interested or brought or being in a place where they can go and see these shows?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like maybe it starts from young. That's the only, because when I think about it, I was like, yeah, what is the reason? Because Black people will spend a pretty penny on a concert. Do you know what I mean? So I'm just trying to figure out, I feel like culturally or whatever, it's not something that we do from young. That's maybe what I'm thinking is the reason, because otherwise, I don't know why. Yes, monetarily, that plays a little bit of it, but I really don't think that's what it is. I think it's a cultural thing. I honestly think it's a cultural thing, and how it's included or introduced or not introduced, or how it's introduced makes people of color feel like the outsider. So they're like, why would I want to engage in that? It could be that as well. Definitely that as well. When your school goes to see a play, say when you're like in grade 5 or grade 6, and they're doing Oklahoma. Jewelle, 9-year-old Jewelle, is not going to be interested in partaking in that. Regardless if it's singing and dancing that I like to do, you're showing me Oklahoma, I have no business doing any of that. But say, had I seen Lion King when I was 8 years old, that would have changed a whole lot of different things for me. So I really think it's about introducing it younger and then nurturing it and showing that you have a place here. It's fine. Go ahead. That's what I think it is. I don't think it's really a monetary thing, because people will spend money on stuff.
Beyonce, right? It's like,
people will spend money on stuff.
$300. Am I going to go see Beyonce, or am I going to go see Dear Evan Hansen?
Yeah,
Then you go see
exactly.
Beyonce, right?
Exactly. Like, I get it. I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
That was a really good answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Who's next?
been quiet. Yeah, I'll go. I was waiting to see if Kenna wanted to go, but I'll go. So I know we've been talking a lot in the vein of like producers and producing on Broadway and making Broadway more accessible and stuff like that. What do you think, or what do you want to see? Because I know with like the colorblind casting initiative, or like people say that they're going to diversify their show, and then it means like adding like 3 other color. Like, what do you think has to be done for minorities to actually have their place? And do you think that comes in like the form of, because ideally it wouldn't have to be a conversation, right? Ideally we wouldn't have to constantly be talking about this. It'd just be there, and would not have to think, oh, I'm going in for the black role, I'm going in for the black girl in this show, right? You would be able to say, oh, you'd go to an audition and there'd be everybody there, right? It wouldn't be a thing. But since that's not the case, what do you think has to be done? Do you think it starts from the top down or from the bottom up, or what do you think?
Oh yeah, I totally think top down. I don't think bottom up, because bottom up, it takes too long for things to change. The people with the power and the money to make the big decisions are from the top down. So it needs to start from the top down. Those people up there need to share or get out of the way to make room for other people who are ready and primed to go and lead this new charge. And because what may end up happening with this racial reckoning that is happening right now is that, yes, we're seeing people getting cast, more people of color being cast in these principal roles, and they're making all these announcements and whatnot. But how long will that be sustained?
Right.
That is the issue. How long before it just goes right back to what it was before? So unless we have those people in power who are making those decisions and are looking to see what is actually going on, nothing's going to change. It's going to change for maybe 6 months, and we're going to go back to what we had before.
Well,
so
like the people in power changing, I think there's so much greed and just like money involved that I think for it to actually happen, that somebody would have to say, okay, I'm not taking this job. I'm not.
They'd have to step aside. And that's ego.
I don't know if that's real. Yep, that's ego. I've been talking. Oh, and you're validating like the rant that I had earlier. It's so nice.
It's straight up ego. And it's almost like, I remember when this pandemic started, I was talking to some friends out here in Canada, and I was like, imagine if all the people of color just didn't audition, just didn't work, just didn't do a show. What would the industry look like if we stopped trying to be a part of that industry? What would happen? Would they then stand up and pay attention? Or would they feel like, oh yeah, this is, would they even care? Would they even notice? Because I almost feel like it has to be something really drastic, where there's like a strike.
Right.
To say, no, we're not going to continue doing this. I almost feel like that's the only, because I agree with you. I don't think any producers have stepped aside yet to say and make room. That hasn't happened, right? We've been talking about this since the shutdown. That hasn't happened. So they're making all these little minute changes and bringing in these diversity councils and people like that. But how much power do they actually have? They don't have power. They're just there to help mitigate the issues that are going on right now. But that's not going to necessarily change or stop anything else from continuing to occur. So that's a problem. And I don't know how that's going to get fixed. It might have to be up to if it's not going to be the producers and those people with the money, then it comes down to the creative teams. And they're at the hands of the mercy of the producer. So I don't even know.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's definitely it's like a sad thing to talk about.
It's sad because no one has stepped aside.
Yeah.
No one has taken, and what's sad about in this movement, everything that's going on, the people who are speaking up and saying something and who are sacrificing their livelihood are people of color. Like, why is it, what's her name? Karen Olivia, why did she have to do that?
Right.
What about the people who run Mulan? Do something. You know, why is Adrian, where now she's saying, I'm not going back to Tina until these, why are they the ones who have to, they're the ones making the sacrifice?
Right.
It's the same thing.
It's really bad. And then, like, I know you said boycotting jobs and stuff, but then it goes back to there's so few and everybody needs to pay their rent, right?
That's what I mean. It's like this.
It's like the system is stacked up to where, okay, this is what can happen. You can either do what we say and you'll get here and we'll look like we're doing something good and everybody's happy, or you can try and push the envelope a little bit further and do whatever your little contributing in the grand scheme of things is, and you're just going to be out of a job, you're going to be out of pay, and we're going to make sure you never find work in this town again.
Right,
it's saying like that we hear.
No. A friend of mine wrote an amazing play, and it was set in the future, and it was about basketball and the basketball leagues, how, you know, it's kind of set up as the owners of basketball is kind of like the slave master, and then the slaves, you know, the people working for them, kind of set up that way. And just the mistreatment of the players, the black players of color, let's say the players of color, the mistreatment of them. And 20 years further then into the future, what happened was all the players of color left that league, left the NBA, and started their own league. And then that's how the change happened. Like, can you imagine if all the people of color on Broadway just said, forget this? They had some power players. They were able to get some theaters ahead of some, and that's what they did. Like, I'm not calling for segregation, but I'm like, if that's what needs to happen for them to wake up and say, like, look, we need everyone to do this. I found that so interesting, because maybe that's the only way they'll pay attention and realize that we need each other. We're not all trying to do this separate, right? Let's be fair and equitable in how we do this and how we share all the profits. Let's share the profits for once.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that is the tea. And just thank you so much for coming onto our show.
You're welcome.
We really enjoyed having you, and yeah, you just said a lot of insightful things, and we're just so happy we could get you on our show. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we love talking to you. I love having this conversation with you. Her Instagram is right here. If you have anything you want to plug right quick.
Oh, there. How do I point to that way?
I know.
Oh
It's weird. Yeah. If you have any social media or any projects, anything you want to plug.
No, not that. Not anything yet. Things are coming, but nothing yet. Just, you know, follow me. I do random stories at times.
Okay. Well, we're gonna say bye to Jewelle, but everybody else stay on because Ken and I have a few announcements to make. So bye.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
See you.
Thanks so much. Okay, so Kenna, do you want to talk about Black theater kids?
Yes, I can talk about Black theater kids. I need to get the thing out so I don't mess up any of the wording. But Black theater kids is awarding $250 of petty cash grants. All you have to do is make a TikTok and tag them on why you deserve a grant, whether it pays for theater productions, dance, voice, or even dance shoes and clothes. So all you have to do is make a TikTok, and yeah, you might be able to. Yeah, I made a TikTok. Mine was I was like Cinderella, and I was like, oh, I'm so sad. Like, I have nothing. I can't do like theater. And then the fairy godmother was like, yeah, you can do theater with Black theater kids. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. So make a TikTok.
Definitely make your TikToks. I'm going to talk to you guys about our social media. We have an Instagram account. It's called @Christina&Kenna. And we have we post who our guests are, and we do all of our updates. It's there. We do all of our updates. And we also have a link tree in our bio that has the link to our GoFundMe and the link to all of our different social medias personally, and as well as our YouTube channel, which is Christina and Kenna, spell the T. And just before you guys leave, or before we leave, I do want to talk to you guys one more time about Broadway for Racial Justice. If you don't know what Broadway for Racial Justice is, it is an amazing organization. They're dedicated to helping people of color in the theater industry and just making work conditions better. I know we spent a lot of time in this episode talking about the conditions and the things that are going on with Broadway and with minorities, and Broadway for Racial Justice does so much work. It's right down there. They do so much work to just make things fair and equitable. They have a casting initiative to try and get more people of color cast in roles. They have different forums and conferences all the time, and they even amplify people of color who are artists. Kenna was one of their amplified artists, and they just do a lot of great work, and they've been around for less than a year. So anything that you contribute definitely counts. No donation is too small. No donation is too large. Definitely go donate. And thank you guys all for coming. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you, and we will see you next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.